What's up, everybody? It's the Roundtable Sports Podcast. My name is Taylor McLean, and coming to you on a Friday. Been a crazy couple of weeks for me. Was without my car for many days, and I've been having to make up the work, so it's been a little hectic as far as podcasting, but there's been so much news in the last little bit, and my world was shaken a bit with what happened with the trade news that came out with Christian McCaffrey. So I thought we'd talk about that and go through some of my notes from what I have for this week. So I was all set. I had watched the Thursday night game, which we'll talk about, and was all set to finish off my night and possibly relax when the news came out that Christian McCaffrey had been traded to the San Francisco 49ers. It had been my expectations that they were going to trade Christian McCaffrey for sure. So that fact didn't really rock my world necessarily, although I hadn't expected it at that time. So I was a little startled to see that it had gone down. And I'm not sure exactly what team I expected to trade for Christian McCaffrey. It didn't seem all that real to me, I guess, until it actually happened. So I hadn't really considered exactly what team was going to go for it. But even if I had, I think I'd still be kind of shocked that it was the San Francisco 49ers that traded for Christian McCaffrey. The trade, if you haven't seen, or if you have either way, for the discussion, is a second-round pick, a third-round pick, and fourth-round pick for this upcoming draft in 2023. And then there will also be a fifth round pick in the next year. So not a first round pick in the lot there. And there's a reason for that with the San Francisco 49ers is they only have one first round pick to trade at this time. And that's 3 drafts from now. So not next year, not the next year, but that next year. That's how far out you can trade picks in the NFL is 3 years. That's why 3 first round picks is kind of the standard for some of these big trades with the quarterbacks. So I thought that we'd probably see a first round pick involved, but still that much draft capital kind of gets you there. Like you could trade that for a first round pick if you really wanted to, and maybe not like a top 5 pick or probably not even top 10. But it would get you into the first round if you were looking at the Jimmy Johnson chart or whatever they call it now. But he was the originator of the draft capital chart thing that most of the NFL teams use to this day, or at least their own version of it. So a nice haul for the Carolina Panthers. I think that running backs that are getting paid aren't as hot a commodity as young talent or wide receivers, like you saw a little bit more capital with Tyreek, right? But still pretty good haul for Carolina, and Christian McCaffrey is definitely worth it. When you're talking about what Christian McCaffrey had been doing on a team that was lackluster, to say the least, on offense, it definitely wasn't anything he was doing or adding to the offense that was making him that way. Christian McCaffrey, when you watch the film, absolutely looks to form and looks like he did before the injury. Maybe he's not 100 out of 100 as far as fast as he's ever been, but to the eye, he doesn't look any slower either. And he still has the aggressive nature as far as the cuts he makes and the angles he takes with those cuts. Those are still all elite level skills that he's showing on the film that he had before as well. And then he's breaking tackles. He's showing the effort that he had before, where he does really fight for those extra couple of yards. And it may not seem like much in the moment, but 3rd and 3 is a lot different than 3rd and 5. And for his part, he was making big plays for the Carolina Panthers. So it wasn't like he wasn't doing his part. It was just a situation where the offensive line wasn't really complete. They have some guys, but even some of the guys they have are flawed or are rookies. I mean, it's not easy to come in and play left tackle as a rookie. So the fact that Ekwonu hasn't just lit the world on fire, he shows flashes, but he's not really showing to be a plus left tackle just right at this time. And then you throw in the inefficiencies of Baker with a team that really didn't seem to want to cater to his strengths. They didn't really have the ability to do that on not only on the fly, but just overall with their scheme. They didn't really seem like they knew how to use him or how they primarily wanted to move the ball in those moments. So, with all those things put together, and I don't want to gloss over Baker's issues either. He's always had issues with his accuracy when it comes to throwing down the field. So you really have to work the intermediate parts of the field and have him try and do his best, like Drew Brees impression. But Baker hadn't really been showing that same amount of accuracy. And I think it was partially because he wasn't used to the system. So he couldn't be like on point and throwing with anticipation. He was kind of playing from behind because he got there late. And then they had to kind of throw him in because they didn't have any other options. And I watched PJ Walker, and it's the same PJ Walker. He's fine. He's a backup though. And once you kind of know what they're going to try and do with him, then that's going to be a problem for your offense because he doesn't have the ability to elevate a team the way you would need him to elevate a team to win, which is fine. I think that Carolina has signaled that they are absolutely packing it in right here. That's fine. In a season that was lost where you fired your coach, you kind of are packing it in a bit. And it's not a bad season to do that. There's no lottery in the NFL. So if you are the worst team, you can get the best player, and CJ Stroud, or even if you're not the worst, getting Bryce Young, which I think I would take in that order at this time, just from what I've seen. That's a pretty good way to reboot your franchise, and to have some extra draft capital to do that certainly doesn't hurt anything. Not a first round pick, but second, third, fourth, and a fifth. You can get things done with that. And if you hit those picks, then you can certainly reboot a franchise that is not bereft of talent. Panther fans have talent on the team still. Robbie Anderson is not a loss. He was a bust. So that's not a loss there. You just drafted Ike. So that you've got a left tackle of the future potentially in your situation. You've got Brian Burns still. If you want to trade him for picks too, fine. But I think he is really talented. Derek Brown is talented. Jeremy Chin is talented. They've hit on a lot of their picks. JC Horn still a little to prove, but I think he has talent too. So there's things you can do with this team in the future. And if you hit a quarterback in the draft, all the better. And then maybe you keep DJ Moore for that quarterback and go from there. We'll see who else the Panthers trade at this point. That may be a fire sale. It may just be Christian McCaffrey and Robbie Anderson. And then because I don't think you want to break the offensive line down to the studs. And I don't think you'd really get much for them at this point anyway, because you're not trading Ike. So maybe you trade Brian Burns, but man, he'd be a terror on another team that already has pass rushers, because as the number one pass rusher, he's holding up for the Carolina Panthers. So we'll see what happens there. New owner. We'll see if the GM is fired. It doesn't seem like they've done a bad job of drafting necessarily, but they just haven't really been able to hit on a lot of things. It doesn't seem like the team was all that well run. Like some of the things you read about what Rule was doing, and it doesn't seem all that professional as far as like an NFL franchise. So I'm not surprised now that all that stuff is kind of coming out, that we are where we are with him being fired and whatnot, and them going this route. So we'll keep an eye on Carolina to see who they bring in and see who they trade in this next week or so. For the San Francisco 49ers, this is certainly interesting and has a lot of implications as well. The 49ers have done some pushing of their chips recently into the middle to try and get wins and try and set themselves up for the future at the same time. they've drafted a lot of talent, and this team certainly has a lot of guys and a lot of potential to do a lot of things here. So to see them trade their second, third, fourth, and then a fifth in the next year and not have their first round picks in either of those drafts already from the Trey Lance trade is kind of surprising. And like I said, that kind of startled me that San Francisco would do such a thing. To their credit, when you look at the value that they're getting in the contract, and the trade does make a lot more sense when you factor that in. First of all, the Panthers restructured Christian McCaffrey's contract in March, so he's only on the books for 690,000 for the first year. So, boom, right there off the bat, you can see part of why they did this is that he's not going to count hardly anything on their books for this upcoming year. And that's a huge value when you don't have to pay that money and it's basically getting him for free, essentially. I mean, that's nothing to a team. That's, a veteran minimum, I think, is more than that nearly. So that definitely works in the San Francisco 49ers favor for sure. And then really when you look at the rest of the contract, what they could have Christian McCaffrey for, because the bonuses that he's been paid already stay with the Panthers. And that's why you don't see these trades as often in the NFL, because the dead money will stay with the team that's trading the guy, and then you're left kind of with a void on your roster. But as we talked about, that's no problem for the Panthers that are going to be rebuilding. And really, after this year, it's not that much money. They're still going to be paying $12 million for Christian McCaffrey, but no more. And only $1 million of that money is guaranteed for injury, and that's it as far as what they owe Christian McCaffrey after this. Now, you have to think that if they paid what they paid for him, then they're going to bring him back, but it's on like a year-to-year team option basis at this point, which is how these big contracts work. Is you're paid like over 6 years, but the last 3 years of the contract typically aren't guaranteed. Now, he's seen plenty of money from that, and if he shows what I think he can show, as I said before in the Panthers part of what I was talking about here, then this 12 million would be a bargain for that as well. So any way you slice it for the 49ers financially, this totally works for them and gives them flexibility as well as gives them Christian McCaffrey. Now, as I said, that's a lot of draft capital to give up for someone that you only had for 1 year or even 2 years. Like that, this amount of draft capital is something that you trade for someone that you think is foundational and that can take you to the next level. But to my point, they could do whatever they need to do from here on in with this as well. So that certainly lends itself to why you might try something like this, but it still was quite shocking because it is a lot of draft capital to be missing. And it's kind of like a couple of drafts that you're not getting value and you're not restocking your shelves with talented guys that can play at really low prices for what they can bring to the table. That's how most of these teams win, is that you have some of those guys that you're paying a bunch. You have your 10, 11, maybe even 12 guys that you can pay like a big contract. But after that, it kind of needs to be minimum guys, and it kind of needs to be rookie guys. So that's a whole bunch of people that you have to hit on in really late rounds, or you better have hit on in previous drafts. So when you make a trade like this, you need to be set up to win at that point right there. You need to be ready to win right now if you're the San Francisco 49ers. But then you've got this Trey Lance situation as well. And then Jimmy G, he's going to be a free agent. So what are you going to do there? Just a lot of boats going in different directions, it feels like. So are your boats all pulling in one direction that can get you the Super Bowl? Or did you strangely put your eggs in the Trey Lance basket, but then now you're pushing it in with Christian McCaffrey? It's weird. It's definitely a weird confluence of events all happening at once to one team. But after saying all of that, I can't wait to see it. From a fit standpoint and from a what can this player bring to this team standpoint, I couldn't be more excited about Christian McCaffrey being on the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan is a master at scheming running game as well as scheming guys open and averting the eyes of the defense and just all the little things you need to be good at to masterfully plan out and execute offense in the NFL. And the reason they spent so much capital on Trey Lance is that Jimmy G is a capable distributor of the football, but he's not a plus quarterback that's going to take you to the next level. So they got Trey so that they could try and go to the next level with someone that has upper echelon tools, but he's not super ready either because he's raw as a passer and just doesn't have a lot of experience as a quarterback. And they tried to lean into that to get him that experience because the only way he's going to get that experience is by playing football. But he's hurt now, and Jimmy G knows the offense. And honestly, he's a better quarterback at this time with what he can bring to the table. It's just he's not going to be able to bring the whole bag of tricks that other quarterbacks are going to be able to bring to the table. So if you're going to be able to win with him, and even if you're going to be able to win with Trey Lance, you need to have upper echelon talent around them, skill position player wise. And while I love Jeff Wilson, I do, and I really like Eli Mitchell too, neither one of them are even close to the caliber of running back that Christian McCaffrey is. Christian McCaffrey is a featured running back. He's a guy that you can put back there, give him all the touches, and you want to mix the other guys in for sure, especially if you have Eli Mitchell and Jeff Wilson. You don't have to give Christian McCaffrey the full workload here because you have other guys to mix in there, which is good because they'll be fresh and they'll be hungry, and you want that with your running backs. That's a great problem to have. But Christian is one of those guys where he gets the extra yards. He makes the extra play. He's going to be able to break things for the San Francisco 49ers, where you think Jeff Wilson was breaking big plays. You think Eli Mitchell was breaking big plays. Wait till Christian McCaffrey breaks one tackle and then takes it to the house multiple times, because that is going to happen. He makes guys miss. He breaks tackles. It's not just one or the other. He's complete. He can pass block. He can catch the ball. Whatever they need him to do, he can do those things. So whatever Kyle Shanahan can dream up for his running back, he can do that and make it accelerate it. He can make it better because it's that sometimes in the Shanahan offense is just about making that one cut or making that one guy miss and you're off to the races. And he can do that, and he can take advantage of those things in a huge way. So I'm super excited to see what he does with that. And then you put Jeff Wilson into that backup role, into that popping, getting the tough yards role. He's great at that. And he's good at being the number one back too, but he's great as a change of pace back for Christian McCaffrey. And then you throw Eli Mitchell into the mix, put them all on the field and have them crisscross in every which direction. Give Kyle Shanahan the tools and he will make it work. I don't all the way believe in him as a decision maker all the time, but offensively, he puts his guys in a position to succeed. There's no doubt about that in the way that he schemes things. It's beautiful to watch, and I can't wait to see Christian McCaffrey. I wish I probably should have started with all that after the big buildup with the Panthers and all that, I guess, but it just it felt right because I didn't want to have to backtrack. I wanted to build up the excitement because that's where it is. I want to see this. I'm going to watch Christian McCaffrey first thing when, the game, obviously it'll be going on during red zone and live, but I'm going to go, this is going to be one of the first games I go back and rewatch as well. Now, the only issue is that it is kind of a short field as far as him ramping up and getting ready for the game. But I have to think that they can just give him a crash course. And I imagine Kyle Shanahan and Christian McCaffrey just sitting in a room talking about everything and what everything means and whatnot. And Christian McCaffrey is a veteran that's been through a whole bunch of coordinators. So I have to think at some point that, some of the terminology is probably crisscrossed we'll see about that part. That could definitely be a situation where he doesn't get quite as many snaps as he will. Well, I mean, I can't imagine he gets as many snaps as he will later on, just right off the bat. But I got to think they didn't just trade for him to nothing. And for a veteran of his stature, that he's going to be in there. I'm still going to start him in my fantasy league. One, because I don't have any other options in this league at the time, but two, because I can't wait to see him making cuts off of this system and where everything's going to be going with Christian McCaffrey on the end of those stretch plays. I mean, he just makes those little plays that and those little steps and the angles he takes and everything that makes guys miss. And if you can do that in a Shanahan system, it's ultimately valuable. So I can see from a fit standpoint and whatnot why they would do this. And this is by far the best running back that Kyle Shanahan has ever had. And I can't wait to see what happens with it, because they make it work with lesser talent. Even though I love Jeff and Eli, they're nowhere near the stature and the ability that Christian McCaffrey has. And it's not just before the injuries and what he used to look like. It looks like that now. I've seen the film. I've watched multiple games. I've been watching the Panthers death slide, and now it's not complete, but I think it's going to be complete at this point, because they're in a tough spot. And now the 49ers are trying to power their way into a power position, because their division is vulnerable too. Arizona's, looked better coming back, which we'll talk about in a second. And, still have Matthew Stafford for the Rams, and Geno looks good, right? But that division is ripe for the taking. They need to get Nick Bosa back, though. That's a big thing for them. And Eric Armstead back. And missing their two horses on defense is really going to hurt them, even though they have playmakers that they've, got otherwise. I like Hufanga, 29, and there's others, but still they need Nick Bosa back. Also, I had some friends talk about, am I worried about Debo Samuel? And I have an interesting team where and nobody cares about my fantasy team, but for purposes on this, I need to use my fantasy team in that I have Christian McCaffrey, I have Debo Samuel, and I have Jeff Wilson all on the same team. And I had been rolling with Jeff Wilson and Debo, which didn't work out last week for Jeff, but still, I wasn't afraid of having the running back and Debo of the 49ers at the time. Now, Jeff has gone by the wayside unless Christian McCaffrey, something happens to him. So that part of my team definitely took a hit with this trade. But I'm not really scared about the Debo Samuel part either. I think that it's more of a situation that you want to have both of them to play off of each other, so that you can't load up on either one of them. And this frees Debo up to be more of a wide receiver and less of a running back, which makes them more dangerous overall. Getting Debo touches as a running back and handoffs as a runner, just period, is a good idea, especially when you can have Christian McCaffrey going one way and Debo going the other. That's good. That's what we're trying to create here, is you have to respect both of them. So you have to kind of pick your poison and then you hit the other one, right? It's kind of, you give them the option of, okay, how do you want to be beat? And then you beat them that way. And then this also gives him the opportunity to run more routes and to get out into more open space against defensive backs, where they are and should be scared of his strength and speed. But his strength, especially in the defensive backfield, is scary, because a lot of those guys are smaller, and then he's running them over or stiff arming them or whatever it is at that point. Although he doesn't have to, he can move around them too. He's very fluid, and it's what makes him dangerous as a ball carrier. But you want to have both. You want to have Ayuk too, but you want to have all those things working. So Jimmy G just has to distribute the ball. They can run the ball, rely on the play action a little bit more, because you have to respect Christian McCaffrey, and you're getting Trent Williams back as well. So it should be big. And then Jimmy G can distribute the ball. Let them pick who they're going to cover, and then hit that open guy in space and let them run with the ball. And then you've got Kittle up the seams as well. They just need to remain healthy on offense, and just like every other team, but especially these big time guys they have there on their top end, and they should be dangerous. Jimmy G can absolutely be dangerous in a situation where he has these types of weapons. Every quarterback can be dangerous when you have these types of weapons. That's the point, is you want to put this type of situation around these quarterbacks. It's too bad that it's not like, Patrick Mahomes or somebody like you drop Matthew Stafford into the situation and they win the Super Bowl for sure. That's just how this works. But Jimmy G is absolutely capable of taking advantage of what's going on here. It's just a lot of these guys have injury concerns or have had injury concerns over the last couple of years. So it'll be about having all of them healthy at one time. I can't wait. I can't wait to see it. I just hope we get to see a bunch of it this week, because it is kind of a short week to have to come in and learn offense. And NFL, it's super complicated because going up to the line with one play is complicated enough, remembering the snap count and getting off the ball as an offensive lineman and a running back and all of that. And it's probably a little less complicated for the running back than it would be anybody else on offense. And that's why you see rookie running backs come in and excel more than other positions a lot of the time, because it is easier for them to learn it. But that doesn't mean that it can't be complicated. And then most of the time, the NFL players are going up to the line with two or more plays in mind there. And then the quarterback will kill, and you have to know what they're killing it to. So you have to know two plays, and you have to know which, he can change the directions. You have to know all the calls that the quarterback's making, and that can make everything really, really complicated to come in on such a short week. But I got to think he was on the flight right then, pumped, excited that he's going to get to play for something, because it's not like teams haven't made the playoffs once they fired their coach. But once you fired your coach, you're pretty much out at that point. So got to think that he's pumped coming in, crash coursing it, going through the walkthroughs. He's pouring himself in the playbook. And just, I would love to see the montage. We're gonna need a montage, a sports montage. He's reading the playbook. He's going through the walkthrough. He's got his 49ers. They're issuing him the 49ers gear, and he puts on a sticker underneath his eye, and it's got the 49ers logo on it, and they kind of zoom in. You can see I would be great to direct the video, the montage video. Maybe that's my calling. It's not podcasting. I should have been a montage video director. But anyway, as you can see, I'm excited about that trade. I was also, you know what? Thursday night football was fun last night too. Let's do a little bit on that. I went a little long. I had more to say about Christian McCaffrey than I thought I would, so we'll end up with some Arizona Cardinals talk here. And it wasn't just the Cardinals. Obviously, the Saints were there as well, and they played a good game. It was an interesting game for sure. Clearly not the most impressive performance by everybody on the field, but we'll get into that. Let's start with the Cardinals. It was tough to see Hollywood Brown get injured just when DeAndre Hopkins was coming back. It was cool to see Hollywood Brown operate as a number one wide receiver while DeAndre was out. It wasn't the smoothest situation, and obviously the Cardinals' season has been up and down, to say the least, but still, that wasn't Hollywood's problem. And he hadn't really had that opportunity to spread his wings in a passing offense up until this point. So to see him excel and to see him look as good as he did doing it while still, working his way into the offense. And I guess really the Cardinals were kind of working their way into form as well. Not that 3-4 really feels like super in form, but still they did look a lot more continuous last night. The big reason why, and the player that I wanted to see Hollywood Brown play with, was having DeAndre Hopkins back for Kyler Murray made all the difference in the world for this team, which doesn't surprise me at all. Having it be 14 targets out of the 29 targets did feel a little extreme. I wasn't expecting it to come out quite like that, but Kyler needs him in the worst way, or the best way, I guess, in this instance. Kyler isn't great at working the middle part of the field simply because he has a hard time seeing it sometimes. He's gotten a lot better, and he's a lot more anticipatory with his throws than he used to be. especially when it comes to over the middle. But still, there's just times when he can't see the middle of the field because there's a guy right in front of him that's too big for him to see over. It's just a fact of life. So he needs somebody that can work the edges and work the outside part of the field to be successful. And DeAndre Hopkins is the ultimate guy when it comes to being able to work that part of the field and being able to consistently get open in that part of the field in a bunch of different ways. DeAndre is entirely complete as a receiver. So, whichever way you need him to be able to work, whatever route you need him to run to make this concept work, he can do that. And for Kyler, he needs that on the edges. So to have Hollywood and to have DeAndre, I was super excited about that because both of them are capable of working the edges. Hollywood isn't the same as DeAndre, but he has a lot of some of those skills, but he's not as big and physical, so he can be jammed. He can be taken out of a play if they can get their hands on him. You can't do that to DeAndre Hopkins. You can try all you want, but you can't do that at this point. And he's so seasoned and so good at being where Kyler needs him to be that it just changes who Kyler is as a quarterback, and it would for any quarterback. It's just like Andy Dalton used to have AJ Green. It changes who he is as a quarterback if you don't have him to change what a defense does and how a defense has to cover you. It opens up everything for everybody else. Not that they contributed a whole lot, but they were there and they made plays when they needed to, and we still got the Dulcich touchdown. And he's not open unless they're paying attention to DeAndre Hopkins. So I mean, it all plays off of itself. And then when you have the ability to do that, that opens up things for the running game. Although I was really excited to see them block as well as they did. It seemed like the best blocking performance I've seen for them in some time. And I'm definitely going to go back and watch the coaching film to confirm that, yeah, they were getting off the ball and pushing some guys around. That's an interesting development, and that's huge for this team. And also part of it was, Benjamin was running really hard, even though they put Deontay Ingram in there to vulture one of his touchdowns, nearly two, even though Kyler threw that touchdown after they called back the Deontay Ingram touchdown. But still, got his and looked good. I mean, he looked really good running the ball. He can catch the ball too. That's not a problem. So I'm excited to see what he can do and to have him as an option coming into some of these bye weeks as well for some of my teams, because he had already caught my eye, but he showed me something tonight that he has a little bit more pop than I realized. And maybe it's also that the offensive line showed me some pop too. That excites me because they need that from this team. They need to be a little bit more well-rounded for Kyler. And DeAndre Hopkins rounds all of that out and can be the focal point of the offense. And I'd be interested to see what their record would have been with him in the lineup. And now that they said that, Hollywood could come back in 6 weeks or so, that, does give me some hope for them going forward. And it's not like they won't have both of these guys for next season, but DeAndre is getting older. So this is something they need to take advantage of while they've got the opportunity. Kyler still a little up and down, but looked better. And I like how they're, scheming him at least one designed run, maybe even two in these games. That seems to really help things. And you need another team to have to worry about that part of it, especially a team that, like the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints are not whole as a defense right now either. Not having Marshawn Lattimore to match up with DeAndre Hopkins is a huge blow for this team, especially, like I said, as dependent as Arizona is on DeAndre Hopkins. It would have been huge to have Lattimore there, but that's not the reason they lost this game. And you know what? Outside of some bad decisions, Andy Dalton didn't play that bad. Like he's a quality backup. It's just he's miscast as a starter, or maybe he's just a super low end starter. Maybe that's it. Maybe he's like the 30th best quarterback in the NFL. I'll have to see where I rank him. I think I forgot to rank him in what I was doing with my quarterback power rankings the other day. I've been trying to work through that now that we've had some time pass. But the two-headed quarterback monster of Taysom Hill and Andy Dalton doesn't really do it for me. And it's games like this where Andy Dalton is forced to press the ball a bit and has to and tries to throw the ball downfield or make plays that you have to have a whole lot of arm for, and he just doesn't have enough arm for that. And that's always been the problem, is that his arm strength, he's been the Greg Maddux of quarterback for some time, except for he's not that level. That's a bad analogy as far as their talent level. It's just more that he's been throwing 84 87 in a league where Josh Allen is throwing 100. Andy Dalton's been getting by with 88 for a long time, and now it's probably more like 86, right? So the decision making is one thing, but sometimes when he has to try and fit it into tight windows and he really goes for it, he just doesn't have enough arm strength to make that happen. And I'd be disappointed to see them continue with him if they do have healthy Jameis, because I think Jameis deserves an opportunity to see what he can do with this team. I love Chris Olave. Obviously, not having Michael Thomas out there is not good. And I really liked having Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, and Olave out there, too. That makes them entirely more dangerous, even though it was cool to see Kevin White break a big play. It feels like forever ago that he was drafted by the Chicago Bears, but you saw when he was out there how big and how fast he is when he was running right. So that was cool, but count me out on the Andy Dalton as a starter situation. That doesn't make me want to watch many Saint games going forward, even though, Taysom continues to haunt me because I said that I didn't want to draft him as a tight end 3, and now he's scoring touchdowns again and whatnot. But anyway, that's what I've got for today. Appreciate the time. I know it's a little short as far as topics go, but these were big topics, and this rocked my world last night when Christian McCaffrey got traded. So I had to go off today. Appreciate you listening. Download the podcast if you haven't already. That's the big metric as far as the podcast goes. Like, if you're listening on YouTube, is extremely helpful as well to help me spread my brand of sports insanity. And I appreciate your time and listening, and have a great rest of your day.